Good morning. It's nothing like being the first on a panel of 6. I am the pace setter, so I will dive right in. I was asked to talk about some specific work that we're doing around P3 leadership and professional education. And I need to first acknowledge that I'm speaking on behalf of a team of folks at home, my faculty co-director, Dr. Gail Joseph, and our program director, Kimberly Kinzer, and Jasmine Buku, our program coordinator. I'd like to start with a couple of definitions. I think in this cross-sector work, when we are spanning early childhood and K-12, it's really important to use our words carefully. So when we talk about P3, we are talking about the continuum of learning from birth through 3rd grade, with P being an adjective, not a noun. So it's all of the learning opportunities children experience before preschool through 3rd grade. So our P encompasses the full spectrum of early learning programs, including Head Start, child care, family child care, pre-K, early intervention, the full scope of birth to 5 services. We were also asked to provide our definition of professional development. We actually prefer to use the word professional education, but we see our work to be timely, relevant, and in-depth opportunities to engage with a cohort of peers. So you'll see this in our model. We don't have an individual-focused approach, but we really focus on teams and cohorts of folks who are learning not just new content and skills, but also being given the opportunity to actively and collaboratively apply their new knowledge and skills into their real-life, real-world contexts. So, what is our approach to professional education? The Washington P3 Executive Leadership Institute is hosted at the University of Washington. We co-enroll practicing administrators from the birth to 5 and K-12 systems. So practically speaking, this means we have elementary principals and site-based early learning directors, Head Start directors, child care directors, pre-K directors, taking class side by side together. We're really trying to span the sectors in having a shared and common learning experience. Before we designed our program, we actually held focus groups around the state of Washington to try and identify what would be a compelling reason to expand and extend one's education. And a couple of things really stood out. The first was everybody says it has to count for something. It's nice to go to a workshop, it's nice to sort of, go to, even weekend institutes, but really what they need to do is to have it count, either towards a degree or towards certification or recertification. And so our course of study is credit-bearing, and we designed the course leveling just right so that our credits can be applied towards a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a doctoral degree, so that they're at the 400 level. We actually have, in our first cohort right now, we have 40 folks enrolled. 2 of them are pursuing bachelor's degrees, about 5 are pursuing their doctorates, and about another 10 are pursuing master's degrees. So another really interesting opportunity to have different people at different levels and different paces of their educational pursuit and attainment, again, learning side by side. It's executive style over the course of 1 year. So we have a year-long residency where the cohort comes together, lives together on site at a facility for an entire intensive week-long kickoff. And then we bring them together for additional weekends over the course of the year for a Friday afternoon through all day Saturday. And then we also have webinars throughout the year. So it's a mixture of in-person delivery and distance delivery. As I've already noted, it's cohort-based, so this same group travels together for the whole year, but we also encouraged people to apply as teams. In particular, we wanted an elementary school principal to have one of their feeder early learning program directors participate together, so that when they're doing their action research projects at home, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute, they actually have some teamwork and some real substance behind it. This year, we actually do have a pretty strong mix of teams. We have a few individuals who enrolled, but our strongest team is from a district that sent, a fairly large district that sent 2 elementary principals, an assistant principal, the central office director of curriculum and assessment, 2 early learning directors, and a school board member. And that is the team that is going through our Executive Leadership Institute from Highline Public Schools. In addition to having University of Washington faculty teach these courses, we have an esteemed National Advisory Board. In fact, your own David Figlio sits on it, as do 11 other national experts in the P3 realm who serve as guest lecturers, guest faculty throughout the course of the year. The curriculum that we deliver over the course of the year really has 3 pillars that are sandwiched between different types of leadership that we think are really important. So I'll start with the top piece of bread, the purple box, where we really want to focus on instructional, transformational, and adaptive leadership, knowing that all 3 of these are really important in these administrators' work at home. Which is a nice place to stop and make note that we are focused on administrators, not teachers. One thing we know is that when we focus on teachers, if they go home to a school or a climate that is not supportive of their approach, it doesn't go far, if anywhere. And it's also really hard to go to scale, teacher by teacher. So we're focused on administrators who have the responsibilities to be instructional leaders for teachers and also have the authority to set the culture and climate of the school or the program or sort of the community context so that we can have a deeper penetration of change. And then we go to the 3 pillars that are in between, which are really our 3 courses. First is we focus on P3 pedagogy. This is ensuring that our administrators actually know what good teaching should look like for little kids. It includes child development, and Doug, I'd be happy to answer your question about that later. Also brain development. We're actually finding brain development is a key piece that especially many of our K-12 administrators never got. And so that's been a really profound part of that course. Our second course focuses on equity-driven decision-making. Because we really believe that P3 work is about closing achievement gaps, it means we need to be better equipped to make decisions and to allocate resources based on equity. And so we have a very intentional focus on equity-driven and data-driven decision-making. And then our third primary content area is around organizational and system change. Again, this goes to that scale issue. We're not just looking for 1 or 2 people to get smarter and better. We're looking for them to transform the systems in which they work, which really requires understanding how do you shift organizations? What does system change entail? And then we go to our bottom piece of bread around leadership, which is focusing on reflective leadership and health and wellness. And this, I think, is something that makes our program exceptionally unique, is that these administrators are facing a barrage of reforms on both the K-12 and the Birth to 5 side, between Common Core, teacher principal evaluations, KEAs, QRIS, new certification standards, across the gamut. There is a huge press to try and keep up. And there's also, frankly, a huge press for these administrators to be the key lever of change in all of these initiatives. And so we really want to help people maintain some balance in all of this and some perspective. So first of all, we have an intentional focus on reflective leadership, understanding each person's own leadership stance and what that means in working with people that are like you and working with people who are not like you. And then we also have a focus on health and wellness and resilience, really so that we are not burning people out and sort of doing the churn of administrators in this work either. So, as I said, those 3 pillars sandwiched between our different leadership approaches are really the heart and soul of our curriculum. What are the measures of success for our PD? Many of you may have seen the framework that actually guides a lot of the P3 work that we do out of the University of Washington, the framework for planning, implementing, and evaluating pre-K through 3rd grade approaches. This, too, is a central piece of our work in our Leadership Institute, but what we have done is designed a scaffolded approach to action research projects. So throughout the course of the year, each of our students is taking their learning and applying it at home. And it's all based on the framework. So for example, one of the first things they had to do was self-assess where their P3 efforts are. What are they doing? What are they not doing? And then they're going to be setting priorities, and then they're going to be creating theories of change, and then they are going to be enacting that change before the year is out. So one of our measures of success is that they will have done something at home that was meaningful, and will have engaged additional partners in the work. These action research projects are just being defined now, and there is a broad range. Some are focused on math, some are really focused on building cross-sector partnerships with feeder early learning programs. It's a real range. One of the last points I want to make, we were also asked to address the question of child outcomes. What is our PD getting in terms of child outcomes? And I have to be really frank that I dislike that question. Because I think in particular with PD, and if you follow implementation science, it skips over a very crucial question, which is what adult behaviors are we changing? What adult outcomes are we expecting to see first? Because we're not going to get child outcomes until we actually start changing our own adult behaviors in classrooms and as leaders. And so it's the changed adult behaviors and skills that we're focused on. Again, in our action research projects, I want to give you just a quick snapshot before I wrap up of what that looks like. This looks complicated, but all this is the age range from birth through 3rd grade along the top. And then we have each of the 8 buckets that are in that framework tool that I shared with you. And in the framework are strategies that are evidence-based, that actually are important in terms of changing adult behaviors. And so we had our cohort of 40, remember, self-assess how they were doing. This is what our cohort of 40 maps across. Red means they are busy doing work that is not evidence-based in terms of changing adult practice. Yellow means they're doing some work. Maybe it's actually going to be changing adult practice. Green means they are deeply engaged in work that's changing adult practice. You don't see any green. We're hoping by the end of the year there will be more green. So why focus on administrators? This is my last slide. And this is my answer to what's needed in professional education is an expanded focus to not just look at teachers, but also look at administrators. And administrators across the continuum, not just elementary principals. It's really our early learning directors who also need this. They have different pathways for leadership development, really few and rare opportunities to work together in a strategic, intentionally action-focused way. As I've already noticed, there's an abundance of reforms in both systems. And yet, we know that they really can change districts, schools, communities when they pull together. Our second cohort applications open in June. We are also, because of demand, right now it says only for Washington-based practicing administrators. Every place I go, every other state wants to know when they can enroll. So our next phase is going to be launching it into an online delivery model so that we can actually start enrolling administrators from other states. I will stop there, except with our last note that we are still continuing a lesser leadership education effort, which was started at Harvard Graduate School of Education, the pre-K through 3rd institutes. Those are just 4-day intensives, also team-based. Those will be continuing at the University of Washington starting this October. And we have to always acknowledge our funders who make this work possible. Thanks very much for having me.